is Daniel Cravens, and I am going to be doing my environmental track reflection on Mammoth Cave National Park and how it impacts the environment and the community around it. So, like I said, Mammoth Cave National Park. First, let's just establish what is Mammoth Cave National Park. It's the only national park in Kentucky, and if you've heard, you probably have heard if you live in Kentucky that it is the world's longest known cave system, which is uh, crazy to think about. That right in our state we have that. It formed about 10 to 15 million years ago. It brings in over 500,000 visitors. Numbers actually closer to maybe something like 700,000. And it's about 2 hours from campus. Um, Another thing we'll get into a little bit later is it's not just the cave, but the actual area above it as well is part of the park, and that's 52,000 acres of mixed forest in this national park. Right. First, let's talk about the impact on the community. Like I said, over 700,000 visitors. This was due to a study. This was done in a study in 2024, and that brings in around $72 million in generated revenue for local businesses. You have all those people coming to, I believe it is Cave City, spending their money in restaurants. You can get a hotel. Um, yeah, it's just a huge deal having a national park. Growing up, I visited. My grandmother used to take me, and it was really cool. And then as I grew up, national parks kind of became a hobby of mine to visit them. I've been out to Utah, Arizona, and just thinking about that, me traveling so far out west, people do that here. They come from across the country, across the world to see this spectacle, if you will. And 800 jobs in the local community. That's huge. Think about it in a rural area. 800 jobs really does make a difference. That's not even including the community, how many it supports. Like I said, with the restaurants and hotels, this is just within the park, 800 jobs, which is huge. And the first way I'm going to tie this into things we've talked about in this modulars unit is the forestry aspect. Like I said, 52,000 acres of forest, so people are coming to visit that. I mean, it's very diverse. Like I said, it mixes with 84 different tree species. It is second growth forest. It used to be farmland, and I believe in the 1930s, they planted around 3 million trees in order to restore this into what it was and bring back that natural look to it for the national park. And one thing that they do to kind of mitigate some risk, but also maintain it, is the prescribed burns. I actually learned about this in my forest fire class. We watched a video about the prescribed burns in Mammoth Cave National Park, just to prevent wildfires and get rid of some of that fire fuel, as you see right there, getting rid of kind of some of the shrubbery. But also, animals depend on this. There's the northern bobwhite quail is a big example. When you have so much undergrowth like that in the forest, it can't get through, and it's unable to get forage or take care of its young, and it's susceptible to predators when it can't move through the understory if it's too thick like that for such a small animal. And there actually are bobwhite quails and many other species in the park that depend on this. So it's very interesting how the foresters and the forest understory and how that's maintained in this park kind of interface not only with the tourism aspect but the animals as well. Oh, and then go back. One thing I said that they could do is offer educational classes on how animals depend and how they interact with forest fires and the history of the forest. I think this is very interesting, and people are coming to not only see the cave, but um, there's a whole other aspect of the park that maybe is not as appreciated, and maybe rightfully so, with how big the cave is. But it's important, and I think very interesting how much goes into keeping the ecosystem afloat. Speaking of such, in the ecosystem afloat, the next interface I have is Stream Health. It is a karst landscape, which means it's kind of porous, so things that are on the surface, water, paint, any other chemicals that kind of get into a fluid state can seep through and make their way into the cave ecosystem and kind of wreak havoc if there are pollutants. And so, how does the National Park Service mitigate this? They have special filters that eliminate in their storm drain that help eliminate pollution. Um, and they kind of have to study. As you see, this dye tracing is something that they've done in the park to see where and these how this fluid would travel through there and kind of get an idea of maybe the path that it takes so that they could set up how to stop pollutants. Like if you have, like they work with restaurants, hotels, parking lots, and if you're understanding how the water flows from those locations, then you can set up points along the way to be able to stop it. And that's what they did with that green dye. They do studies and kind of it's a non-toxic dye, and they let it flow through there, and then it makes it easier to trace because if it's just water, you're not going to be able to see it at all. Very hard to trace. I mean, maybe an impact or something that they could do for this is require the nearby businesses and people to become educated, maybe through a small course or like some kind of certification on what pollutants that they might have, and maybe just educate them and maybe have them get some kind of certification that they are aware, or maybe that they use chemicals if possible that would not interfere with this, and just kind of mitigate that risk and kind of eliminate possible harm to wildlife and plants and just the cave ecosystem. All right, and that is the end of my slideshow. Thank you guys for paying attention to my environmental track reflection.